welcome to this week's edition of the Engineering Ignition podcast with myself, Scott Buchanan. And thank you for taking the time to tune in, and I do hope you enjoyed today's show. As part of our Experts and Leaders Engineering podcast series, we have had some insightful conversations around successful businesses and individuals within them, and some very impressive ideas over the course. Today is no different, and I'm delighted to be joined online with Bob Windmill, whose chemical and process career has taken him in different directions throughout his tenure, from superbikes all the way to water, and as an academic director at the moment. I do think sometimes engineers feel constrained by what they can achieve, and I'm looking forward to learning about Bob's insight as to what his experiences and learning curve has been for the water industry, and where the future lies, and Bob's future lies also. So without further ado, Bob is presently the academic director at British Water Engineering College, and I'm delighted to welcome him to the show just now. How are you getting on this week, Bob?
Very well, thank you, Scott. And yourself?
I'm not too bad, not too bad. It is sunny in Scotland today, so yes, we're just getting everything spruced up for the summer.
Okay, so shall we get the show on the road?
I think that's a good idea. So what is, for people that don't know of you, Bob, I mean, I've been learning about you since we've been talking, but I mean, can you give a background of where you're coming from? What's your background? How does one become an academic director?
Well, first of all, Scott, I'm probably as surprised as anyone where I've ended up in my career. My background is in the water industry and water treatment, which is pretty solid process science. And I started many years ago with Anglian Water as a very junior trainee laboratory technician. And if somebody had told me then what I would be doing today, I would have suggested they get their bumps felt. I just had no idea that I could have a career like that. If I could have, my height of my ambition was, let's get the next grade up and try and get this training position turned into a permanent one. So that was where I started. And I arrived as this cocky, bright, just out of school student. I won the school chemistry prize 3 years on the trot. I played football for the first 11. How could work be anything other than welcoming? And rapidly learned that work and school are two different things. First of all, pink jeans and flowery shirts. No, thank you. Okay, got that one. And here is the washing up. Please don't break anything. Yeah. Bit of a come down. Okay, what I didn't know is it was actually part of the training system. You start, you do the basics, you learn to do them well, and you build on it. So over time, when I was washing up, my colleagues would come by and tell me about various bits of equipment. Okay, just putting little building blocks in place. Then I got to watch them doing stuff, doing it for myself, being left to do it on my own, building my knowledge, being sent out to various treatment works to learn how they worked in reality. All those good kind of things. And over time, I learnt to build on those. The first big lesson I learned was, look, be great at your day job, be great at the basics. Don't settle for good, and then try and add something extra to it. So when I was working in a clean water lab, I made a point of learning about wastewater. So when the laboratories were amalgamated, I could hit the ground running. That worked. It was a principle of a building block that said, be great at the basics, add something, then try and move on. So worked my way up the laboratory service greasy pole, eventually ended up in charge of analytical quality control, which is as mind-numbingly pedantic a trade as you could ever possibly hope for. And if I never have to do it again, it will be too soon. Okay. But it was something I was really good at that other people couldn't do. And one of the key points I've found over the years is if you stand out in your current job, it helps you get your next job fairly well, regardless of what it is. Because the number of sideways jumps I've made are amazing. So, eventually got this AQC job, figured I've had enough of this. Going to be a technical expert at the top of a very small pile. And I just figured I wanted to be a decision maker, not just somebody who followed the recipe and told people what to do and where they were going, where they were going wrong. So the opportunity came along indirectly that Anglian Water decided it was going to launch a commercial laboratory offering. And I stuck my hand up to say, look, I'll take this and run with it. I hadn't got the faintest idea how to do it or what it would be like, but it meant I got to loads of experience of speaking to end user customers. I learned about pricing products, stuff like that, which you would never have got as a mainstream analyst. Still had to do the AQC job alongside this, but hey ho, nothing ventured, nothing gained. And it was successful. Then Anglian Water had one of its regular reorganizations, and they created this wonderful job called a field scientist. And it was about looking after drinking water quality in the distribution network. Previously, all the scientists did was made sure that the treatment works were running properly, and that was it. Then the rules changed, and the point of measure stopped being what left the treatment works and became what arrived at the customer's taps. And surprise, surprise, all of a sudden you've got to figure out what can go wrong between a treatment works and a customer's tap. Nobody knew how to do this. So we just had to make it up as we go along is a bit strong, but we found by doing what worked and what didn't work. And that was quite successful. I was one of 6 people doing this. We met regularly. We kicked ideas around. We developed the new way of doing things. But alongside this, the area I was in had some big commercial customers. People like Core Tools, the big dyeing consortium, a couple of power stations, 2 oil refineries that had very, very specific water quality requirements. And of course, they were looking for somebody to go and speak to these people who could actually understand the technicalities of what they're saying, and I lost the vote. Yeah, and actually, I stuck my hand up because I thought, well, the worst they can do is shout at me. It was a fascinating experience when they said, oh, we've got boilers. And you suddenly find you're standing alongside something the size of a small block of flats. There's 9 of them in a row. And they explain to you how if our water quality goes wrong, their boilers go bang, and there's a crater half a mile wide where there used to be this chemical factory. No pressure there.
Yeah.
But, you listen, you learn, you make sure you can take these messages back to my area manager to say, look, you need to take this more seriously, and here's why. And it was there I learned, I suppose, the art of effective speaking. And I was struggling to get him to understand. I said, well, look, do you fancy turning Core Tools into a crater half a mile wide on your watch? Because that's essentially what we're risking here. And surprise, surprise, it got his attention. Took him up there, stood him beside these boilers, and he understood.
Yeah.
Learned a lot about communicating upwards. But I was still quite a technical person at this.
Yeah. And Bob, sorry for cutting over here, but I'm thinking here to our listeners when the topic that we're looking at is from techie superbike racer to academic director. No, I'm just reading between the lines here that there's a key piece of this jigsaw. I reckon that you're hiding from us all. I mean, and I think what we were trying to suss out is why where you are doesn't necessarily define where you can get to. So where did the bikes come in, and was it really a proper superbike?
Okay, right. Yes, guilty as charged, hiding it. In the early days in the lab, it was pretty routine stuff, and I needed a hobby, and I always rode large capacity road bikes because that's what I fancied. Went off to Snetterton one day to act as a track marshal, watched these people going round and thought, I'm sure I could do better than that. So bit the bullet, entered my road, did my road bike up a bit, entered it in a race and found, surprisingly, yes, I could do better than that. So all of a sudden, in addition to everything else, I was a part-time superbike racer. Are they a superbike? Produce 150 horsepower, will top out 175 miles an hour. Fairly super.
Yeah.
Now, because of my means, I couldn't afford the latest whiz-bang full-house superbike, so I entered a class called production, which is for much more standard machines. But you could also enter one of those in the full superbike race. What I discovered is if you concentrated on getting the basics right, my relatively modest production superbike could live with the full house racing superbikes most of the time. So I learned a very valuable lesson that if you concentrate on the basics, get it right, practice hard, you can get 90% of what you want for 20% of the cost. And it was literally, I had a £10,000 superbike. They were racing £50,000 superbikes. And most of the time I could, in a field of 40, I could probably finish second, third, fourth.
Wow.
So that valuable lesson. You also learn a lot about planning. My thing was about, I want to win championships, not individual races. So learning, don't chase. If somebody's having a better day than you and going faster, it may be wise just to let them go. Yeah, pick your battles. Yeah, just over the season, I need to score more points than them. The big advantage I had this relatively standard superbike, which didn't break down, whereas all the highly tuned ones were forever going pop.
Mm-hmm.
So, I just figured, okay, they're fast today, let them go, come second or third, rack up the points, wait for them to go bang. So picking your battles was an important thing. I discovered, to my surprise, I had a ruthlessly competitive streak when the chips were down. Because occasionally you'd end up in a situation where there's two of you, whoever wins the final race or whoever beats the other in the final race of the season takes the championship. And then it was just a question of, are you prepared to do what it takes to get there? And I was. I remember on my production superbike racing against a full house highly tuned equivalent and desperately trying to find a way past them because they would scream off down the straight and I would have to try and claw it back round the corners. I eventually managed to get in their draft down the back straight and launched what I think is technically known as a headless chicken braking effort around the outside. Don't know where it came from. I just remember sort of looking across, looking at his foot alongside my head, thinking this could hurt. But it stuck. Did a block pass into the next corner, and I was off and running. Yeah, I had no idea I would do that.
Yeah.
But so occasionally you can.
So sorry for cutting over. That's clearly in you then. I mean, that's been brought out because of the bike, hasn't it? That's brought out because of your competitive natural ability. And do you think that ties in well to where, if you look at your career and where you are now, and I guess what you were touching on earlier about, which we're going to lead on to, I guess, the future, what you're trying to achieve as well. Do you think that's a main driving force behind it, or is that just an add-on?
It's absolutely critical. Having that competitive streak that I want certain things, I'm going to get them. So if it means moving, in one instance, from the very nice cathedral town of Norwich to the, with no disrespect, not quite so nice fishing port of Grimsby to get a better job, I will do it. If it means going on to an IT secondment for a year and driving down to Cambridge at stupid o'clock in the morning, spending all week working down there and then driving back in order to broaden my skill set, I did it. And it's just, I think, a different side of that coin that says, will I make that desperate effort into the last corner? Will I do the hard yards of being apart from my family in order to get the experience that I need? And the answer to both was, yes, I will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess going forward then, so you're at that piece now, so you are in a position where you've accomplished plenty, and I guess, I'm sure if anyone wants to learn more, we can do that as well. But I mean, I'm keen to learn more about, from a business perspective, what you are, I guess, whether it's the key challenges or the key learning pieces that you've encountered. I mean, what would you highlight?
Okay. You have to have a direction of travel for yourself. In my case, early on, it was, I want to be a decision maker. And then as I got that, I wanted to be a higher level decision maker. So every action I took had to line up with, how will it help me get there? I was never particularly motivated by money in itself, but I always figured that if I did the right things and got on, the money would follow. Mm-hmm. It did, and it was very nice to have. I've tried being well off, I've tried being poor. Being well off is better. Poor. At one stage, my wife and I had 19 pence in cash between us and owed loads of money. Ouch. Didn't like that. So we just stopped going out for 2 years, stopped having holidays for 5 until we were back on our feet. We did the hard yards that we had to. Now we want to go out, we want to travel. There's none of this economy class lark because we've done the hard yards. So I think the second one is, do the hard yards early on because it will pay you back. So the direction of travel thing continues. Now it's much more about me helping other people to help themselves, and particularly help people build the careers that they want to have. So my thing is, look, here's some of the things I did. These are the ones that worked, but more importantly, these are the ones that didn't. Make your own decision which you're going to pick. Mm-hmm. You might try one of my failures and make it work for you, but my 50 pence says you're better off trying the things that did work. I ended up in this position kind of by chance, in that after Anglian Water, did some project work on the Isle of Man, noticed linked to racing motorbikes, had a job that said, Bob, you have to watch the TT. You're obliged by your job to watch the TT each year. Oh dear, what a pity, never mind. So I learned there about the world of contracting, another string to the bow. Came back, got a job with the Sector Skills Council, learned about skills and skills development, skills shortages. It's there where I first came across the ageing workforce in the utility sector, which is starting to seriously bite.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, I'm part of the problem. I'm of an age where I should be retiring, but I can't quite bring myself to do it. I'm just having too much fun. Been offered this role of academic director in the British Water Engineering College. And the thing that really attracted me to it wasn't about the technical learning. It was about helping people build careers within the water industry, taking them from various backgrounds, helping them understand the technical stuff they need to have, but also the softer management skills. Because the people to get on, what I have found, you need a mixture of both. You need a good, solid technical background. Be great at something. Never stop learning. I learned about water treatment, science. I then learned about water treatment. I then learned about managing water and distribution. Went off on the IT project. Learned about thick and thin clients and why you shouldn't mix them. And even though we did, crazy. Got my project management chitty while I was on that. Came back, got the dream job of my choice, got the top treatment job, arguably in Anglian, and just had that feeling that this could be as good as it's going to get in the water industry. So that was when I went off contracting on the Isle of Man, because I think it was as simple as I worked in the north end of Anglian Water. All the good jobs went to people who worked in the centre. So, but whatever, I couldn't get the kind of jobs I was looking for, so I left. Coming back to this competitive streak, if you can't give me what I want, I will go and look elsewhere for it. And I'm not too worried about what it is. So it was a bit of a diagonal leap, not a total sidestep. But I ended up helping them replace 5 old treatment works with 2 new ones. And I had the dual role of the water production manager and the senior client. So all of a sudden, the stuff I learned on the IT project, my Prince 2, managing risk, that kind of stuff, dead useful. So that building block I put in 3 or 4 years before suddenly became useful because I could talk their language.
Yeah.
Which was nice. Yeah. Okay.
And sorry, Bob, but that'll have given you the credibility piece within there as well. And I guess, you touched on something there that's very relevant, and it's not just utilities. There's a number of sectors and industries that this is reflecting at the moment. Clearly, water has the significant piece around the age demographics at the wrong side at the moment. Where do you see the future going? What based on what you've learned, based on what you know, what's the future going to look like for these types of organisation, and what needs to happen?
Okay. These people charge a lot of money for this advice,
I did promise you a whole can of iron brew.
A whole can of iron brew.
A whole can. And not the diet version, the real full fat.
A whole full. Okay, you're on.
Mark my words.
Yeah, I think the industry is going to have to wake up to the fact that it's made a big mistake probably 15 years ago when it didn't recognise it had this ageing workforce problem looming. Because when I was with Energy and Utility Skills, people kept saying, We need more chartered engineers. Okay, that's a problem because you need to have a first degree and 10 years experience. You should have asked me this 13 years ago. It's a problem. Okay, you can't fix that one now. That horse has gone well and truly. So it's a matter of finding ways of working around the skill sets that are available to you. So it will be things like bringing the people you have got forward at a faster rate. And my old organisation, Anglian, are having great success doing this, as are Severn Trent. There's worked examples where they're giving people opportunities that they would normally have got in their 40s while they're in their 20s. And by and large, they're rising to the challenge. So you'll be trusting the younger people. Finding ways of reducing the headcount, of reducing the need for headcount. Can we automate? Can we do things better? Can we, a very simple example, in water treatment, there's hours and hours of technician time spent checking chlorine and pH sensors. I'm currently working on a project with some people from Warwick University on replacing these with solid state sensors that don't need that maintenance, and do some clever stuff as well. It takes away the need to use talented technicians on basic checks.
Yeah.
There's that kind of thing. There's the idea of looking at the whole workforce. So rather than just saying who needs to go on what courses, what kind of workforce do we want? We want a flexible one with lots of different learnings, lots of different skill sets. So they have a wide skills base with one or two specialities on top. Whereas the move over the last 10 years has been, you are a civil engineer, you do civil, we call you in when we want some concrete. When it's set, as it's setting, we wave you goodbye. Okay. That's great until something like COVID-19 comes along, and suddenly the world is completely different and you need multi-talented people. So part of my advice to any big organization is find ways that work for you of giving people as much experience outside their core role as possible. So things like interdepartmental projects. Don't just try and solve your bit of it in isolation. Run interdepartmental projects. Run things like Rising Stars schemes. Notice a rising star does not have to be less than 25 years old. There's some really good people in mid-careers who are just maybe looking around thinking, I wouldn't mind having a go at something else, and have a huge amount of life experience they can bring to new areas if you give them the chance. It's a big ask because currently there's all this downward pressure on headcount, and I'm sitting here saying, well, no, you actually need to reduce people's workload, take on more staff to give them the learning they need, to build the skills they need to offer you enough performance in the future to offset the extra headcount.
Yeah.
There is a technical basis behind this. There's a wonderful thing called total factor productivity. At its simplest, it's a measure of how well people, particularly managers, make use of the resources available to them. And in typically the UK, our total factor productivity is about a fifth lower than that of, say, France and Germany. Now, my 50 pence says, if we can close that gap, doing the kinds of things I've been talking about, making sure our managers have proper management qualifications, we're not just promoting our best technicians, which please don't do it. Please don't promote your best technicians unless they really want to be a manager. So unless people do that, if we can do that, we can start bridging that 20% gap. And My second 50 pence is, if you do that, you will end up ahead of the game. As I wrote in an article for the Institute of Water magazine a few months back, if we could do that, everybody could have Friday off.
Wow.
Can it be done? Yes. I know it can be, because over the last 5 years, I've been doing interim management jobs. And typically they've come to me as, look, we've got this interim management job, it's a full-time position. And I've said, no, I don't want to do it like that, but I will do it for you 3 days a week as a contractor. And the hardest sell is that they don't believe I can do it. But I did it for a small inset water supplier, went there initially for, I think, a year, stayed 3.5.
Yeah.
I never worked more than 3 days in any week, got everything done that needed to be done, because I have a technical master's degree, I have an MBA. I have that level of learning in both sides of the equation, and it enables me to get a lot of stuff done, because not only do I know it, I learned how to apply it. To be fair, it did take me 2 years after I got my MBA to actually figure out what it was about. I got it. And the practical stuff, like if you're going to, why are you going to a meeting? Simple stuff like that. Do I need to be at this meeting, or can I make my contribution some other way? Can I just have a slot rather than being there for the morning or the day? Those kind of things. Learning to focus on what's important. It sounds very straightforward, but ask yourself the question, is what I'm doing useful to what I'm trying to achieve today? Learning not to overplan. I always worry when I see people who've got a diary that is rammed end to end every day. The only certainty they're going to fail. And this quaint idea of, I'll catch up. No, you won't. Because if you can't keep up today, what makes you think you can do 20% more work tomorrow? So, it only ever gets worse and worse. So, learning to schedule sensibly, focus on the task in hand. To me, dead simple stuff, but so many people don't do it.
Yeah. And I think that drives on from the world that we've all evolved into, where, it's very easy just to type something in your diary and to have back-to-back meetings and so on. But actually, is that making you productive? It comes back to this productivity piece again, doesn't it?
And arguably, if I was looking to be 20% more productive than average, I've demonstrated in that inset water supplier position and as interim water quality monitoring manager for Southern Water, that I can be thick end of 40% more productive.
Wow.
Everything done that needed to be done in 3 days a week.
Yeah.
And if I can do it, other people can do it. But to be fair, I've been doing it for 40 years. If I'm not at the top of my game now, I'm probably never going to be. But imagine your middle managers are on the same path. They are 20% more productive. All their team members are 10% more productive because they have better managers and supervisors. So building a really high quality management setup will pay you back many times over, and it will keep paying you back. What we learned at IWNL, the little inset water supplier, was by upskilling the supervisors and team leaders, the people under them, when they were promoted, had the same ethic. And when they went on to become managers, they took that productivity ethic with them up the line. And essentially, it was then quite normal. I went on from them to do a piece for their parent company, big organisation, £2 billion a year turnover, and did a piece on workforce development with them. And the parent company did connections for water, gas, electricity, fibre, and telecoms. And they now have a system where everybody who's identified for progression must be doing either a master's of some description or be working towards chartered engineer, preferably both. And that's just entirely normal. If you're not on that program, it's available to you if you can make a business case. If you're on the program and don't make the progression, you're no longer on the program. So that's an example of where they've truly embraced the idea that if we can upskill our supervisors, managers, and cross-skill our technical people with management skills, we will get the productivity gains that will enable us to stay competitive in the marketplace. It seriously challenged some of the technical engineers. They were absolutely brilliant in designing solutions. And I would hear, well, you can't put Fred in front of the client, he'll bore them to tears. Whoa, stop, rewind, let's try that again. How about we train Fred in how to talk to a client? Otherwise, you're bringing two people into the same meeting. Literally, it was somebody who could talk to people but wasn't very good technically, and somebody who was brilliant technically but couldn't talk to people. And they made some huge gains by cross-skilling people. So, so to come back to your question, I think the big things are around cross-skilling and multi-skilling at quite senior levels.
Yeah.
If the senior people can't do it, the middle people won't want to do it. There's no point in cross-skilling at a medium level if it doesn't help you reach a higher level. And we found people who kind of bloomed by learning how to talk to customers and engaging with them. Their feedback was, look, we just got much better at designing solutions because we know what questions to go and ask of our end users. And we're not losing stuff in the translation. So make your people as multi-skilled as possible. And evolve that multi-skilling, give people responsibility at the lowest possible level you can in the organization. So you're not relying on a small number of high-level technical experts. Yeah, I mean, that last point was really important for this, for IWNL's parent company called Brookfield, that they had probably one of the world's best gas experts for their gas division, and everybody deferred to his judgment. But of course, he was 65. Oops. And he wanted to leave. And there was talk about dividing his job up into several parts. And I think he eventually agreed to stay on for a bit while suitable candidates could be brought up to a high enough standard to at least give them a fighting chance of replacing him. And they ended up, I think, with 3 or 4 really strong candidates who would all do his job in their way. They wouldn't try and be a drop-in replacement, but they would do it well enough, and they would learn to do it really well, essentially once he'd gone. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think, Bob, it's great. I mean, what you're saying here, you say it as someone that has seen it, done it, and doing it, that way, and certainly it gives a great insight. And to be fair, the phrase "it's not rocket science" is used far too often, in my view. However, I've been writing down as you've been talking, and It's not the first time I've written things down as I've been talking to you, but I mean, if you look at some of the key things you've come out with, such as diversification, be great with the basics, if I can read my own writing, be great at the basics and work in the basics as well, and picking battles. And this idea of multi-talent, across an organisation, it all comes back to, spreading the risk, I guess, but also increasing productivity of an organisation. And actually, having, it doesn't need to be not at a senior level or at a lower level either. If you've got someone it's a whiz kid, why wouldn't you develop them? And speeding them up through the process.
Yeah, I mean, let's be fair. There are some amazingly bright young people around. And they occasionally have conversations with them where the last thing they say good morning, it's probably the last thing I understand for 15 minutes. So their journey is to find ways of expressing their brilliance in this language called English, jargon.
Yeah.
And if we can tap into that, that will be a building block for them. Just communicating with non-experts.
Yeah.
And if you've got people in your organization who are good at it, have them running workshops. If somebody's really good with customers, get them in, get the engineers in, learn from each other. Because learning doesn't have to be all about courses and qualifications. Courses and qualifications are good. Qualifications open doors, they give you credibility. But a qualification has never built anything. It's what you do with that learning. And some of the best learning experiences that I've had is where you just get groups of people together to kick things around. And a lesson for big organizations is make sure you create enough space for those conversations to happen, formally and informally. The idea that people are only working when they're chained to their desks doesn't do it anymore. It will turn off the most capable people. You will end up with the methodical people who like following a method and are happy doing what they're doing. That will not get you through the next COVID scare or through the next banking crash, or God forbid they happen at the same time. You are going to need flexible, bright people who like to be challenged. And if it means giving them the space to grow and develop their skills and experience, that is, to use a phrase, that is a gift that will keep giving. You give them those skills and experiences, they will pay you back many times over. So, it's very much a case of, invest in your people, trust them, but do be clear, they have to produce.
Absolutely. And I think that's probably a good point to say thank you, Bob. I mean, genuinely, it's never I always learn something from speaking with you, and I think I look forward to hearing. I'm sure our paths will cross in the future as well. Should you wish to, I mean, that's Bob Windmill. Is presently the academic director at British Water Engineering College. Goodness knows where your career is going to take you now.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, I can help you with that.
Okay.
I mean, the British Water Engineering College thing, absolutely wonderful thing to have, but it's the water industry. And my latest thing is I want to help people wider than that. And what I'm currently doing is setting up a little organization to sit alongside my main consultancy company called Building Great Futures.
Okay.
It's around the idea of helping organizations and individuals understand what their future could be like, and what are the steps they need to take to give themselves the best possible chance of getting it. Because as we know, There's a lot of careers have been built on being in the right place at the right time. You can't always influence that, but what you can do is make sure that you have a wide-ranging skill set that you can bring to bear on any number of different situations. If I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have been able to leap sideways from Anglian into contract land, off to energy and utility skills to develop national standards, and then become their head of research within 6 months. That kind of thing. Then off to start my own business. Yes, I started my own business, and a week later the banks crashed. So it's my proud boast that every single idea I had about earning a living for myself didn't work. So I had to then find other ways of earning a living. But I thought, stick with it. If you can make it work now, it will work really well when times get better. And it did. So, wide-ranging skill set. Don't be frightened of having a go at things. Yeah. And organizations, give your people room to grow and develop, but in a structured framework that's of benefit to you. Okay.
Absolutely. And I guess with this venture, is there a way, should anyone be interested? Is there a way of getting in contact with you, Bob?
Yep. Okay, my website is called buildinggreatfutures.co.uk. It's still in development, but it will give you an idea. If you want to get in touch with me, you can get in touch with me through my current business email, which is bob@windmillinsights.co.uk. Yeah. If you type in Bob Windmill blog into Google or the search engine of your choice, it will also find me and some of the stuff I've written about. So,
well, I'm about to do that once we're just finished up and learn, see what else you've been involved in. But that brings us to the end of another episode of the Engineering Ignition podcast. Thank you again, Bob, for taking the time to meet with me today. It's been a pleasure. And I look forward to the next episode, should you and I wish to do another one. And thanks again for everyone's time and effort in listening to this podcast. Many thanks.
Yeah, and thank you too.